Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May installment of the 2018 Out and Equal Virtual Summit Series. My name is Ben Demers, and I'm the Out and Equal University Senior Associate here at Out and Equal, and I'll be your host for today's call. The topic of the May webinar is ERG BRG Best Practices and Inspiration from Outie Award winners, with the Outies, of course, being a set of awards given each year at the Workplace Summit to recognize individuals and organizations who are leaders in advancing equality for LGBTQ people in workplaces globally. The awards are given out for individual champions, ERGs, and for workplace excellence, and all of the presenters on today's call were previous Outie Award winners or were on winning teams, and we'll be sharing with you the best practices that helped them win the award. Before we get started, I want to go over some quick logistical items about the ReadyTalk platform that we're hosting today's webinar on. So this call is a live broadcast audio call, meaning you should be able to access audio through your computer. If you or a colleague is having any difficulties logging in and cannot access the link you used to register, please sign in by going to readytalk.com, clicking Join a Meeting, and using access code 6946521. During the call, we also ask that you chat in questions using the chat function, as we'll be having Q&A sessions throughout the presentation with our presenters. After the call, a recording of the presentation will also be made available for you to rewatch or share through your networks. I also want to mention some upcoming dates to look out for at Out and Equal. First, the deadline to submit nominations for this year's Outie Awards is Friday, June 15th, and you can find more information for those awards on our website, and I've listed the link on the last slide of this presentation, which also will be made available at the end of the call. On June 9th, we'll be hosting our next global webinar on recent challenges and successes in advancing LGBTQ workplace inclusion in Brazil, which will be our first Portuguese language call, which we're really excited for. Also keep an eye out for our next virtual summit series, which will be hosted at the end of June, the date of which is still being determined. And then finally, for events, we'll be hosting the Out and Equal China Roundtable in just 2 weeks at the GE China Technology Park in Shanghai, China. And for more information about that event, you can contact global@outandequal.org with any questions. Now, before I hand it over to today's presenters, I want to introduce them. You'll be hearing from Alexis Cantor, VP of Product Design and Development at Target, John Stotler, Head of Talent Planning and Development Technology at Wells Fargo, and Jessica Jangaspero, Senior Manager in Supply Chain Communications at Johnson & Johnson. So each of these presenters has done fantastic work in the area of workplace equality, and we're very excited to hear more from them and have them share their insights about the Outie Awards with you. And with that, I'll turn it over to today's presenters.
Awesome. All right, so this is Alexis, and I'm just going to kick us off. And I know between Target, Wells, and J&J, we're super excited to be here and be able to talk about our experiences and hopefully learn from the questions we get asked. And we really believe that while we may have been Outie Award winners, we're all on a continuous learning journey. And any chance we get to work together and collaborate on ways to make us all better, then workplaces around the globe will benefit. So thanks for being with us. So Ben did a great job already telling you who we were, but each one of us will probably just give a little anecdote of kind of our day job, and I like to call it my gay job. So for me, I have the privilege of leading a product design and development team globally, and I'm the sponsor for our LGBTA Business Council. And I've been incredibly lucky to hold a couple different positions on our business council, and I can't get uninvolved. For me, it is such a business imperative, and I feel really lucky that Target values not just our business positions, but our positions on ERGs. John, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Alexis. As Ben said, this is John Stotler, and I'm at Wells Fargo. I lead our Talent Planning and Development Technology group here for our Human Resources group. And I'm also the past leader of our Wells Fargo Pride Team Member Network, which is our LGBT employee group. I was privileged enough to, as Alexis mentioned how proud she is of what she does, but I was in that role for 4 years, and for about almost 10 years before that led some of the work at the enterprise level as well. I'm taking a little breather right now to focus on me and my day job at work, but look forward to getting back involved at some point in the future. And I'll throw it over to Jessica.
Thanks, John. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone on the phone. As the slide says there, Jessica Jangasparrow. I support supply chain communication for our medical devices sector within Johnson & Johnson. I've been with the company about 12 years, and probably for a majority of those years have been somehow engaged with our LGBTQ and ally employee resource group known as Open and Out. But in the last 6 months, I actually stepped into the enterprise co-chair role for that ERG. So super proud to have the opportunity to lead, our group across the globe within Johnson & Johnson. So as Alexis already mentioned, we're here on a continuous learning journey together. And today's conversation is really going to be centered around sharing best practices and inspiration for your ERGs in the hopes that you'll end up, looking at this photo and seeing yourself there in the near future and maybe even at the next summit. So what you'll see from Alexis, John, and myself are examples from our experiences as ERG leaders and really what we believe got us, gave us the opportunity to actually stand on that stage with the Outie Award. We're not perfect by any means, and as Alexis already mentioned, we're on a continuous kind of learning mode. So even if you don't end up on that stage, I think our goal today is to get us all thinking about what more we can do to really elevate and enhance the work that we do within our ERGs, keep pushing our boundaries and reaching new heights. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thanks, Jessica. And so when we started working on this before last year's summit at Philadelphia, we really kind of wanted to think about this strategically and present this in a way that made a lot of sense, we thought. And we'll look forward to your feedback to see how this resonates with you. But the 4 principles that we really kind of focused around were what you see on the screen right now. When we talk about getting the foundation right, it's about that base, doing the things that grow underneath everything, that operationalize everything, getting that right up front. The advocacy part of that, the power of advocacy is amazing. How you can do that within your company, how you can do that through your company in the broader community. Part of that is unleashing the scale of your ERG. How do you use the power of the people that you have involved in your group to move your organization and the community forward? And moving from there, how do you be bold? How do you lead the way? Don't be afraid to try something new that no one else is doing. Put yourself out there, put your company out there, put your group out there. So we want to hear now from you. We've got a couple of polls here, which will help us kind of narrow down and what we're going to do. But Ben, I think, you've got the poll up there, so we'll give you a minute to respond to that before we move on.
Great, and we can see the responses coming in. So let's look at some of the results. And it looks like getting the foundation right is the thing that most people are feeling their ERGs are doing well. So that's great. I mean, that's obviously the first step in really setting up the programming, and you need that strong foundation to be able to move forward, as John just said. And so the other thing that we want to hear more about is also where you feel your ERG could use the most help. And that'll help guide our discussion a bit today. So again, seeing the responses come in. And it looks like that unleashing your ERG's full scale is really the topic where people feel like they're hitting the most roadblocks. And so we'll make sure to focus on that in today's discussion and presentation.
Great. Well, we're going to jump right in. We're going to each talk a little bit about each of those 4 items. And so I think we're going to jump right into getting the foundation right. And I'm going to throw it over to Alexis, who's going to tell us a little story about what they've done at Target.
Great. Thanks, John. So I'm going to set this up with a little context of what was the situation when we drove the strategy we did. So for us, part of getting the foundation right was considering our name. And this all kind of happened during a perfect storm. We're located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And a few years back, Minnesota had a marriage amendment on the ballot. And we felt that there was we knew you had to really connect with other people through your stories. And you had to not just think about it, you had to hit people's heart. You had to find the commonality. You had to find the connection. And as we were thinking about that, we understood that we couldn't do this alone. We needed to engage every ally possible, and not only engage the allies, but turn them into advocates. And so we realized that our name, being LGBT, felt exclusive, and those allies around us didn't know how to join in. And so it was a very purposeful name change. And it wasn't just a name change, it was a true ally strategy that went through everything we did. And so we created, we like our swag at Target, so we created new name badges, or we created opportunities for toolkits, resources, education. We put on role play events. You name it, we did it. And it all started again from that foundation of how do we make sure that no one feels other and everyone sees themselves in our work. And so again, what started as something simplistic as a name change really led into a massive strategy, a huge pivot in our work, and the enterprise feeling like they were part of our journey. And we do this fall national meeting, and so everyone at Target goes to this big meeting, and we had created T-shirts that had the definition of ally as we defined it for this work on it. And it would give you goosebumps when you looked and saw all of the T-shirts walking to that meeting, and we knew that we had everyone's support. And so again, it went from people not knowing, how to get involved, what to do, to us giving very tangible action steps of how you make phone calls, how you stand up for someone else, and what it truly means to go from an ally to an advocate. So that was our story of kind of considering your name and what kind of strategy goes along with that. So I think, John, you might take the next example.
Yeah. I was going to jump in and tag on to that. Yeah. So just as Alexis talked about, one of the things that we did at Wells, too, was really think about our ally network and how do we strengthen that. And so we built a great program within Wells Fargo to support our allies. What we found was a lot of the allies to the LGBT community really wanted to be a strong, good ally. Sometimes they just didn't know how. And so it was about giving them the resources, making those easily found, accessible. And we took that further. Once we kind of crossed that hurdle with allies and kind of gave them the tools and really grew that and really got a great response from that, we started looking at other ways in which we could improve things for the company. And so one of the things that we looked at was we had really great policies in our human resources group around transitioning in the workplace, or how do you as a manager handle a team member who is transgender, or how do you deal with things within your team with that, or a variety of things. We had all these policies, and they were great and they were wonderful, but they were hard to find. And so that made it kind of complicated for anyone coming into the company or someone in the company who decided or made that move to transition. And so what we did was we worked with our human resources group to make that easier to find. We made those toolkits and things public. We made them easier to use. We made them easier to find. The language in them was evolved so that it was simple, it was direct, it was a process that could be followed easily by anyone and understood easily by anyone. You didn't need a human resources professional or a lawyer to figure it out. And so we had our transgender toolkits, and this kind of grew too. We started hearing that we're a very public company. We have individuals coming into our branches all the time, and throughout the country we were understanding that our transgender customers were having issues and challenges with identification sometimes in our stores and in branches. And so we developed a toolkit for our branch network that talked about how we serve our customers, all of our customers appropriately, and particularly with transgender customers, how do the nuances of identification and fraud protection work together to make sure that we are making those customers feel like we are the financial institution that they want to do business with. I'm going to turn it over. I think Jessica has got some examples too of foundational items from Johnson & Johnson.
Sure do, John. So, I mean, certainly at J&J, I think we've dealt with the challenges that Alexis and John have already covered, but I'll touch on two different foundational pieces that I think, we really strive to get right within J&J. And the first being structure. I mean, we are a very diverse global group with locations, around the world. And the one thing that we really felt was necessary was to ensure that we had, boots on the ground in each of those campuses, as well as representing, our remote employees or folks that are in the field. So we really do make a concerted effort to ensure we've got passionate people that can be physically present, and in the case of the virtual or field chapter, ensure that they're in some way bringing those members together, just so that we really feel like we're connecting and engaging at all levels around J&J around the globe. And then the second piece around the foundational materials, which John touched on a bit around policies, but I feel it's pretty valuable because there are a lot of policies, procedures, and support systems or networks within the company that I feel like are just not visible enough to our ERG members or associates that could benefit from them. So we really do try to have a very strong connection with our HR partners and our corporate office of diversity and inclusion to make sure that those policies are at the forefront. But something as simple as thinking about how people enter the organization and how they may be onboarded to the organization, I think are also two key areas to think through. So one, in terms of how are you maybe partnering with your talent acquisition group to ensure that our community is being reflected in the way that they're going out and seeking talent, as well as when we're actually making offers and bringing people into the organization, how can we help to support them and engage and educate them about the ERG or those policies and procedures or benefits that could certainly support them as an employee. So again, I said on the top of the call that we're certainly not perfect. Even within J&J, I think we've got a lot of room to enhance that process, but I think it's really important to make a good first impression, and certainly that's a focus area for us. Okay, so with that, I will turn it over to the next section of leveraging ERGs for advocacy.
Okay. All right, that's me. I'm sorry, I was just going to look back and look at a question that came up because I think we can answer in this portion, but I can't see it right now.
Oh, and you're right.
Yeah, we'll find it and we'll answer it. No worries.
We're going to pause questions in this area.
No, it's okay. Oh, great. So, sorry, Jen on the line asked how to address LGBT employees seeking a safe space for discussing sensitive topics, even one without allies. So I love that question. Thanks for asking it, Jen. We've had unfortunately, I have some examples to pull from because I would rather there be no examples of anyone needing safe space and our whole companies would be safe spaces. Our business council, or our ERG, has become that safe space because we are known as a resource that doesn't just drive personal work. it is business related, and it's there to ensure that every single person at Target feels included and supported, both personally and professionally. And so our council has really been that safe space. We've had situations where team members who were struggling with a leader or with work situations came to us. We're able to elevate it to the right human resources partners. We're able to maintain confidentiality. And through the experiences we become aware of, we are able to drive change in policy and procedure. And so I think it's really important that if you set the right foundation and you think about truly leveraging your ERG for advocacy, there's no better way to advocate than for the team members that are working throughout your organization. And so as John and Jessica answer, they may have some other ideas, but I would argue that that's getting your foundation right because you are that safe space. And so then just switching gears then to the leverage your ERG for advocacy. And based on the poll, this is really where people wanted to be able to unlock more to do good, right? And so from a Target perspective, we really felt that our council wanted to focus on the business. And we did a lot of analysis, and we felt that it was time to do Pride merchandise. And we made a lot of business cases, but in the end, we became the business unit that didn't only come up with the idea, we actually brought it to life. And so I think what was so interesting about that is we learned so much. We learned about working with different parts of the organization to drive a consistent strategy of what Pride meant. And then something really special happened at Target. It went from something that the Business Council, our ERG, had done to it being embedded into a core merchandise role. And so our merchants now line plan Pride gear. We have designers chomping at the bit to be the ones who get to design this product. And we have a holistic strategy that is beyond anything we could have imagined. And so we saw massive growth in store participation and sales. We leveraged our external partnerships and vendors to really expand how we could show up across our store in many different ways to show how we take pride in all we do. And then it was, again, right, as we continue to evolve, because this has been a multi-year strategy and it continues to grow, we wanted to make sure that we were being inclusive of all. And as we moved into the next phase of our assortment, we made sure that our the bi and trans community could see themselves in our work and in our products. So again, the amazing thing is what started as a seed and idea in our ERG bloomed and grew into this amazing garden now tended by every area of Target. And so it is just fully embedded into our business structure. And you can see on the picture, we have Take Pride as our marketing campaign, and it really allows us to do some great things. So there's a question. Have you faced criticism that you appear to be profiting from Pride, and do you donate funds? That is a great question, and I'm sure one that everybody sitting on this call has had, and we did too. We launched this product with a give back, and I think the first year we did it, we gave to Family Equality Council. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go way back and remember some of the stuff, and I'm looking at Colby to know for sure. But so we did absolutely, because we did not, given some of our external history, we did not want to look like we were profiting from something. So we did do that the first year. I would say it continues to be a story, but the story we try to tell at Target is our advocacy extends beyond what we do with one give back. We give back every week. We do it through our Target as a whole, and as a business council, we are actually given budget to make sure that we are working with key nonprofits that will help drive change in a positive way in our communities. So while it may not be as visible, we have a story to tell. And I think it's important to understand how you tell it both internally and externally, but to not shy away from doing something that you know is right. We know this Take Pride product makes people happy. It makes our teams happy. My daughter is running around in a sweatshirt right now that she won't take off even though it's 100 degrees here because you're prideful. And so I think it's just a balance of how do you make sure you're balancing both the internal and external needs. So I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks, Alexis. And I want to hit one of the questions too, because it really kind of, I think, talks about what I wanted to share with you. And so DS asked, have any of you created ERG solely by design to be of lived experience, people designed to be making recommendations to your senior staff? I'd love to hear from anyone whose ERGs were less social and more tactical, and any good and problems of that. So yeah, that's a great question and kind of ties right into what I want to talk about. You know, our network has been around for over 25 years. And it really started to kind of try to build that visibility within the organization in the late 80s and early 90s. And what it was originally seen as by our enterprise was a social network. It was to participate in pride events. It was for team members to get together and socialize with each other and get to know each other. And when we were a small company, that was awesome and that was amazing. And when things were not as good as they are today in our world, you know, we didn't have Ellen and we didn't have the internet and we didn't have Will and Grace. That was enough for our team members. But as we grew, we understood that we needed to be different and we needed to do things differently. And so over the years, we really worked to not only change that perception that senior leaders had of us, but also the dialogue that we had with them. And so where we have gotten to now is the leadership team, the enterprise leadership team of Pride, meets regularly with the senior executives of the company all the way to the CEO and talks about the issues. We had our CEO speak at Out and Equal several years ago. It was an amazing experience. I still get notes from people that say that was one of the best CEO speeches they've ever heard because it really was true and from the heart. And part of that was just the culture change that we have made among our senior executives and the open dialogue that we have with them. What that has enabled us to do is take the strength of the voice of these executives and use them as our heroes in advocacy within the community. And so I live in North Carolina, in Charlotte. You know, several years ago we were extremely disappointed when our government passed what everybody probably knows as HB 2, House Bill 2, the bathroom bill. I was extremely proud when, you know, immediately our executives got together. They wanted to hear from us. They wanted to hear from team members. What was the impact? We have 30,000 employees in the state of North Carolina. Wells Fargo was not known for taking a stand against local legislation, even national legislation. We're a bank. Unless it had to do with financial services, we generally didn't talk about it much in the community. This was one of the first times where we were able to, because of that cultural shift, because of that dialogue we'd been having with senior leaders, get them to address this very publicly. And so our CEO sent a letter to the governor and very publicly made a pronouncement that this was bad for the economy, it was bad for the community, it was bad for the state. And so we were really proud about that. We have since had that advocacy from our very senior leaders around a number of issues, internal and external to us. And so I hope, DS, that helps and answers your questions. It really was a long road for us, but it was intentional. We are a business. We understood that if we're going to make change, we need to drive this somewhat like a business and move that forward. And I think Jessica's got some further examples from J&J.
Yeah, I certainly do, and I just want to echo that within our ERG as well, the support that we've got from literally the senior-most levels of leadership within the organization has been hugely beneficial to us in all the same ways that John's already described, from really the top of the house, our chairman and CEO, Alex Gorski, you know, all the way through the executive committee and the levels below. So that I really want to stress it again because it is, I think, something that helps us to move with a lot more agility and speed to some of the decisions that we've taken in terms of supporting a lot of external policy and more socially, sort of conscious, sort of public statements. And maybe what I'll do is I saw that there was a very specific J&J supply chain question here, which I think is an excellent one and really not one that I come across a lot. But so if I'm saying it right, Christian asked, how do you handle ERG representation and participation at a manufacturing facility with your hourly workers? Did you have to develop a different playbook for these sites versus more of a business office setting? So absolutely. And again, I'll just keep saying we certainly are not perfect. We've got a lot of room to grow and do better at J&J. I think we have very strong presence within what I'll call sort of our headquarters sites that have more, I would say, commercial or R&D focused functions, where we know we've got a lot of room to grow is within those supply chain organizations, operations around the world. And part of that is, to be honest, Christian, that a lot of those reside outside of the U.S. And generally speaking for J&J, our experience has been that a lot of the D&I, so I'm taking kind of a step up broader across all of our different ERGs, whether they're groups focused for African Americans, Hispanics, et cetera, is that sometimes that cultural nuance doesn't really resonate in another country like Mexico. So, for the LGBT ERG that I'm involved in, it's a little bit of a different story, but then you've got a challenge as well in terms of what's the safety of the employee population there culturally? Is that is it acceptable to identify as LGBTQ, et cetera? So I will say that we are starting to move in that direction, and I'll come back to the fact that having the support of the senior leaders across the organization and really hold hands on essentially putting their money where their mouth is in terms of their commitment and their dedication to truly creating an inclusive environment for everyone is key. We're dealing with populations that don't always work at the same times, right, in terms of if you're in a plant, different shifts, the amount of time that they spend on campus. So it's not that I have the answer for you, but it is a challenge that we're trying to actively solve. But I think we're at the very beginning stages in terms of really trying to create a level of awareness and education around employee resource groups and why they can really drive value for the business, but also help our employees have a much more positive and productive experience at J&J. So happy to chat more about that later on. And I do want to keep us moving because I am keeping an eye on time, and I know we've got a few more sections here to go. So I will then turn it over to the next slide around unleashing the full scale of your ERG.
Great. So it's Alexis again, and I'm just going to hit two questions that I saw as we go into unleashing the full scale. What somebody had asked online how Target manages store team member engagement, and I'll actually go into that when we talk about kind of pride in the box, because this is one of our moments where we're continuously learning, and I love hearing from other people who have remote and hourly team members and understand how they do it. So it is an active strategy that we are working on doing more and more each day. So I'll go into that, but I did want to just answer a few other questions where we're talking about how do you engage business and your senior-most leaders. I do think you have to run this like a business to be taken seriously with your senior-most leaders. We did that through how we analyzed benefits and drove changes to our transgender benefits, as well as adoption benefits and other things. And I think as true advocates for all, we have to show up in a space and make sure that we are creating better situations for everyone. So we take our work with our benefits team very seriously, that we don't just want to make sure that LGBTQ team members experience a better life through the benefits they achieve at Target, but that everybody does. And then again, when you think about having the very most senior leader involved, when we transitioned to our new CEO, Brian Cornell, within minutes of him coming on board, he actually signed an amicus brief for marriage. And so again, when you make the right business cases, there's no way for your senior-most leaders to do anything but support it. So thanks for the great questions, and we'll move into unleashing the full scale, and this talks to our stores a bit from Target. So Pride Month is huge, right? I think you'll see it from everyone. And at Target, we take our brand really seriously. That bullseye doesn't go on just everything. And so combining kind of the joy of Pride, our business strategy, as well as unleashing our full scale through the stores, the team created a Pride in a Box. So it's an on-demand box that contains corporate brand and supply so that we want to have control over how we show up and how we show up consistently for all of the communities, but it allows every store to participate in their local Pride. We started this back in 2014, and just to give you some numbers, in 2017 there were 20 boxes that went out with over 4,500 team members engaged. And so this really allows us to support the big Target brand. It allows people to customize and attend and be part of the right events for their community. And it is a way for all team members to feel empowered to volunteer and to participate on behalf of Target, right? You're not just celebrating Pride Month, you have a real pride in the work that your company does and how we show up in the communities. So I'll turn over the next example to John.
Thanks, Alexis. And I'm going to try to hit a couple of the questions that are out there too about remote members and engaging employees across multiple locations and time zones from both Charles and Nina. Thank you. So kind of jumping off of where Alexis was, we have over 12,000 members in our network. We are a 275,000 team member company with a global reach. And so certainly one of the challenges that Wells Fargo has experienced over the years as we've continued to grow and grow and grow and move beyond our boundaries of 420 Montgomery Avenue in San Francisco is how do we keep everyone engaged? How do we keep everyone informed? And so some of the things that we've done is because of that membership, because they're everywhere, we have over 50 physical chapters in everywhere from Hong Kong to San Francisco to London and New York and Charlotte and Birmingham, Alabama. We also have virtual chapters, and so in areas where we have a population of team members that may not be of critical mass, because we simply just have a branch network in that city or in that area, we offer virtual chapter setup and where these team members can actually participate virtually in events. And some of the things that we do because of our size is big virtual events. We started this about 6 or 7 years ago. We started leveraging technology that we had in the company, and we started having big town halls that were broadcast out across our employee television network to all team members. So whether you were a member of Pride or not, at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday, you could launch it on your computer or go into the break room and watch it. But we had things like PFLAG come and talk about allies and what it makes to be, or what it takes to be a good ally, and education about being an ally. And we had the Service Members Defense League Network come and talk back when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a thing, and talk to our team members about what it was like to be in the military under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And we partnered actually with our Veterans Team Member Network to deliver that so that we got a broader reach to our team members. We've had multiple events like that. We have engaging speakers, internal and external, who come and talk to our team members through a TV broadcast. We also have chapters who have kind of on their own taken those broadcasts and built kind of like what Alexis talked about, Pride in a Box. They're building an event in the box. And so they've got somebody creative in their chapter who takes that video and kind of cuts it down a little bit, so maybe it's a 30-minute instead of an hour. And then they build a series of dialogue points around that, and then that can be delivered out to the chapter in a chapter meeting or a chapter call, so that it's reaching further down into the network. one of the things that we've been challenged with as we've grown and we're global and we have chapters, as I mentioned, in APAC and EMEA, is that time zone. We record calls. We record those broadcasts. We send those out via email so that team members can watch them at their time when it's convenient for them. We try to schedule live calls at a time that works pretty well across our footprint. It's a little challenging with East Coast and Pacific Coast and India and London, but we do the best we can. We're not going to hit everybody all of the time, but it really is about using the resources that you have. We just said, hey, our CEO does town halls. Why can't we? Why can't we use the same technology? Why can't we do the same thing? And so I think Jessica's got a couple of things to throw in about from Johnson & Johnson. I hope that I addressed the questions that we got online.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so I'll continue to piggyback on that because I think, technology has been a great enabler for us, especially as we're a much smaller ERG. So it's hard to believe, but for the size and scale of J&J, 125,000 plus employees around the world, right now our open and out ERG only has about 1,300 registered members in 30 chapters. So we are a very small but mighty group is what I always say. So I guess the lesson there is that you can still do a lot with a seemingly small number of people that are highly engaged, super effective, and really passionate. But I think, the technology piece is huge in terms of being able to reach a broader audience via town halls and WebEx and recording and providing replays. But the one thing that was really transformational for us in just the last year, and I realize that maybe a lot of companies have not moved to this platform yet, but we were able to, as all of the ERGs within J&J move to Yammer, so some of you are probably familiar with this, and those who aren't, it's essentially an internally facing social media platform. So all of the ERGs within J&J essentially moved to that as being their primary communication channel. And the reason it was transformational for us was, it's open to all of those 125,000 plus employees. And of course, at any given moment during the day or night or whatever time zone you're in, you can have a very interactive two-way dialogue that, is open to everyone. And we were really able to reach spaces and places within J&J that I don't know that we even knew existed, as far as South Africa, where we had an employee say, I didn't even know that you had a D&I program within the company, never mind an entire ERG dedicated to, the LGBTQ plus community. So that really opened a lot of doors for us and has essentially started a growth wave in terms of where we're establishing new ambassadors and hopefully eventually new chapters around the world. So that's been really transformational for us in just the last year in terms of us trying to really grow our reach around the world with all of our associates. So that's been really helpful. And I'll also say, as Alexis already sort of touched on, that turnkey toolkit and making sure that we've thought of everything for our chapter leaders already, so they really just have to think about execution locally and being able to customize those materials so that they can have a locally appropriate program or activity event in their area. Okay, so I'm going to keep us going here on the final slide.
Great. Okay. So be bold and lead the way. I think at Target we have really tried to shoot for the breakthrough moments and really make sure that thinking about inclusion is embedded in everything we do. And so just to give some history of the ways we've embedded throughout the business in bold and new ways, in 2012 we launched our same-sex registries, and we started some light LGBT marketing, maybe not as overt as we would all like, but again, embedding it so that it became part of your DNA and the DNA of Target. In 2014, again, we, beyond just doing Pride in a Box that allowed our allies and advocates to grow, we participated in Pride events in major cities and, again, launched our Pride merchandise in stores. So, again, trying to think about inclusion and the LGBT community in all parts of our business. In 2015, again, embedding this straight into our marketing campaigns, Take Pride, hashtag Take Pride launched. And then in 2016, to build on what John was saying, and this came with some controversy. We went public after after HB2 in North Carolina, and I think what was interesting and a good learning for us was it sounded like Target was making a new stance or taking a new stance or claiming something new. But in the end, what Target was doing is they were taking what is our policy for how we expect people internally and externally to be treated. We made that public. And because of that public-facing comment, we certainly felt the heat. And I think if you are going to be bold, and if you are going to lead the way, you recognize that you're going to step in a few things that will, in the end, be a little bit painful for you, but be exponentially easier for the next person to go through. And I think all three of us have corporations that are large, and with our scope and scale, we should be leading the way. We should be making it easier for other organizations to do some great work. And then if you follow Target at all, you'll have seen that we are launching 14 new brands across home and hardlines and apparel and accessories and food, you name it. And it's really exciting to see that these brands are created to have values. And every single brand that was created has the value of diversity and inclusion. It isn't, when we go and make a new men's brand, we are thoughtful about how many different communities can be served through that brand. And so again, when you think about everything from your foundation to unlocking the full potential and being bold, it is continuing to build on your amazing strategies, embedding in that business so that you have every opportunity internally and externally to kind of crack whatever ceiling you're hitting up against. And so I think John's got some other great examples.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've been working on is really getting connected with our corporate properties group and trying to help them understand as we grow in different areas and outgrow old space and need new space, really kind of talking to them and really being very thoughtful about how we approach those spaces for team members of difference. And so one of the things that we're doing is gender-neutral bathrooms and unisex bathrooms in our office buildings. And this has been a several-year process for us, but, or some things that we've done as well in North Carolina because of HB2, we have single-use bathrooms that have to be labeled, unfortunately because of the laws here, but they're private, and so you're not going to run into issues with individuals in those bathrooms. But in places where we don't have those constrictions, we are implementing in spaces where we can and in new buildings unisex and gender-neutral bathrooms. I think that's one of the things that's been really bold for us and really differentiates us as an employer. When individuals can come into our buildings and understand that they have the ability to use the bathroom that is most comfortable for them. And I think, Jessica, you've got some great things from J&J.
Yeah, we certainly do. So kudos to you, John, and your organization for driving that. I think that's incredible. At J&J, I look at the words on the screen there around great ideas come from anywhere, and I really think we live into that, we are really trying to create an environment where all of our members really do feel like they can put great thinking forward, and that we've got a bias for action, and that what we can certainly do is take a look at those suggestions and fill gaps where needed. So 2 examples from J&J. One is around our workplace gender transition guidelines. So essentially that guiding document that we use now for our employees who are transitioning in the workplace came from someone who transitioned in the workplace and realized that there was no set process. So that person really had to go through that themselves, and then felt like, hey, since I've lived through it, I can help others also through that experience. And we also essentially elevated her, within our ERG structure as our transgender liaison. That's Jenna Cook, who some of you may know. But she's done phenomenal work to create those guidelines in partnership with HR, our senior leaders, and help, a lot of other folks go through that experience very successfully. So, she went from living it to creating the policy and now helping others, which is really incredible. And then the second example is around our Care with Pride program. So somewhat similar to what Alexis has been talking about in terms of LGBT marketing, but Care with Pride really was born out of the passion of one of our marketing leaders who's since retired from the company, but felt like there was an intersection there between how do we reach out to this community in a very authentic way to let them know that we're supportive of them through our consumer brands. And that was established 7 years ago as a very small, I would say almost pilot program. And 7 years later, J&J proudly marches in over 25 Pride parades, across the U.S. And does that hand in hand with our consumer products brand. So those ideas really, were quite, I think, breakthrough for their time. And certainly are built upon every year. But we really do try to give not only our chapter leaders a bit of autonomy in how they feel like they can further enhance the vision and the mission and the strategy of our ERG in unique ways, but we'll take certainly great ideas from anyone who wants to put them forward. So we really are looking at our ERG as being an opportunity for our employees and our associates to experience different things across, outside of their day job that maybe they don't have the opportunity to do, or work with different functions and collaborate on different projects and work in areas of the company that they haven't really been able to do before. So we do pride ourselves on, as a participant or a leader within the ERG, really rounding out your kind of career development. And that's something that I think we've been very successful in. Okay. So with that, I will, on behalf of Alexis and John, say thank you for your time and attention. I know that we have a few minutes left, so I think we've got a lot more great questions that are coming through that, potentially we could answer a few of these.
Yeah, I wanted
Definitely,
to address a question that was about how do you give allies a strong voice in the Pride ERG. Just real quick, one of the things that we did at Wells Fargo a long time ago was create an enterprise role for an ally lead. And so that person really was responsible for driving our ally program and also being a voice for our allies at the enterprise level. So, one of the things that I would suggest is looking to your allies and whether they're already involved with your network or on your leadership team, get some strong voices from that community involved in your leadership.
To build on what John was saying, from Target, I think it's interesting because even our names can, in and of themselves, be exclusionary. So something that the Target team is undergoing right now is working to transition from an ERG named LGBTA Business Council to a new name, because we want all voices to stand strong. And so we want to make sure that every single person within our community and our ally and advocacy communities can see themselves in the work. So balancing leadership teams, making sure we have a diverse perspective within. Because the thing that makes our organization so special is the multidimensionality of each person in this community. And so we have a lot to balance beyond just making sure allies have a clear voice. We need to make sure we're thinking about it from race, socioeconomic, global. And so again, right, we're learning constantly. We're super excited about where we've been, but we're still on the journey to be better and to make sure that we create safe space for all voices.
Great, thank you. And I think we actually have time for one last question. There's one that I'd really love to hear answers from each of our speakers. What kind of advice would you have for an ERG just getting started in the Deep South? So kickoff events are planned for the end of June, so any advice kind of for that event?
Well, I did reach out to Michelle directly, but being in North Carolina, I can relate to that. And having been down here for a very long time, certainly, Michelle, reach out if there's anything that we can help you with. But I would say, one of the things that we've talked about today is be bold and get some strong voices to advocate for you. But there are also a lot of small things that you can do, and we'd be happy to share our experiences. Like I said, we've got chapters all over Florida, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So we're very aware of what the challenges are around here.
Thanks, John. And I think from a target perspective, we're willing to kind of provide any materials that you think could be beneficial, because while you're trying to launch such a great group in a tough spot, you don't need to recreate the wheel. So how can we all be your advocates and provide better information? And I think John's right on, and he has better experience. But the one thing, while you're being bold and leaning in, I think you want to make sure you're meeting people where they are. Because, again, we all know how it feels to be othered. And in our goal to drive inclusion for the LGBTQ community, we don't want to other anyone else, right? And so I think we have to be our best selves. We have to role model the very best behavior, and we have to at times meet people where they are so we can change hearts and minds.
Yeah, so I would just add on to that. I mean, I think that's great advice, and certainly, John, you've got probably some great examples to share. From a J&J standpoint, I mean, I think that there is some real power behind ally experiences and stories here that others could relate to and really help bring people along on this journey. So, for example, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's not the Deep South, but we didn't have a presence in our facility there, our manufacturing plant, but I made a connection with a parent of one of our employees whose son had just recently come out to him as gay at 13 years old. And his, journey was about acceptance, right, and how to be a better father. And he has now taken that experience and really shared that out, and he's gotten, I think, a lot of great positive reception for that. But I think it also helps to tell the story of why this should matter for other folks who maybe don't immediately identify as LGBTQ plus. So I think that there are some different angles and different ways you could approach this depending on what's going on in the place where you're trying to start the ERG. But good luck to you, Michelle.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And I want to take this moment again to just thank all of our speakers on today's call for all the insights you've shared. And if you have any other questions that we didn't get to during the call, then we'll, of course, be able to connect you offline with the speakers to kind of continue those conversations. Some last-minute shout-outs. Please remember to complete the brief survey that is sent out at the end of the call. Your feedback is really important for helping us cater this series and really give you the content that you as our community members are looking for. So if you have a moment, please fill that out. Also, if you're interested, especially after this call, to learn more about this year's Outie Award process, you can visit the link there or search Outie Awards on our website. And so especially if you'll be at the 2018 Workplace Summit, it would be a great thing to consider. And then also after the call, as I said, the recording and the slide deck will be shared. But to view all archived Out and Equal webinars, you can visit the link provided, outandequal.org/webinars. And you'll be receiving a follow-up email after this call. So thank you again to everyone, and we'll see you again on next month's call.